Seung Min Kim of the Washington Post. She's their ace congressional reporter and covers the White House. Seung Min, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
I would like to begin by having you explain to us whether or not the debate about the tragedies in Atlanta and Colorado, two mass shootings, and I put both of them in the psychological category, not the ideological category. Is this all a prelude to a debate about the filibuster?
It could definitely lead that way. It seems like a lot of policy debates in Congress, especially in the Senate, are going to turn into arguments about the filibuster. I can tell you that I was traveling with the president yesterday to Ohio, and the first question that reporters asked White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki in the gaggle on Air Force One to Columbus was whether his push for gun control would change his thinking, would change the president's thinking on the filibuster. And Jen said it doesn't. His position remains the same. But it's certainly going to be a heightened focus in the coming weeks. You know, Chuck Schumer has promised a floor vote on the two House passed background checks legislation. And we don't expect that legislation to get 60 votes. It might not even get 50 votes. Senator Joe Manchin, a Democrat from West Virginia, has said he doesn't like the Democratic or the House passed background checks legislation. He would prefer a more moderate compromise that he negotiated with Republican Senator Pat Toomey in 2013. But it's certainly, you're going to see that floor fight or that fight over the filibuster continue to increase in the coming weeks.
Now, Arizona Senator Mark Kelly ran largely on a gun control platform because of the tragic shooting of his wife, Gabby Giffords. Is he involved? I did not see him quoted anywhere yesterday. Is he keeping the traditional rule that freshman senators are to be seen and not heard, even on his signature issue?
He's actually been pretty chatty in the hallways when we've gone up to him and asked him questions. Maybe it's just a matter of reporters not seeing him in the hallways that day and more attention being paid to senators who have been more visibly involved legislatively in the issue, such as Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, Senator Pat Toomey again of Pennsylvania. But certainly, as the legislative debate increases, the focus is going to come on every single senator because we're going to talk so much about this over the next 2 years. But the 50-50 Senate majority is just such a tenuous majority that Democrats have. And every vote matters. You see the power of any one Democratic senator and how the coalition can fall apart if even just one Democratic senator defects from the party position.
So, Sung Min, I hate to do this because talk radio depends upon an endlessly changing kaleidoscope of issues. There has to be news. I don't think there's going to be any news in the Congress for a long time until the next reconciliation bill comes along and they can both increase taxes and increase spending, as was done with the corona relief, blue state bailout bill, I call it, and Democrats call it a relief bill. That's fine. But I just think as a realist, I've covered Congress forever. They don't have 60 votes for anything except the reconciliation. They have to make it work for Joe Manchin. And the reality is there's nothing going to happen. I mean, literally, nothing's going to happen except maybe in big tech. Am I being too cynical?
You might be cynical, but you're not necessarily wrong, obviously, because you're right. You lay out the dynamics right there when any sort of this ambitious, almost any parts of the Democrats' ambitious agenda really does require 60 votes in the Senate, such as an immigration overhaul, which, even the smallest bits of immigration changes seem to be non-starters in terms of 60 votes in the Senate. You have voting rights legislation that Democrats are pushing. You have, obviously gun legislation, a litany of other issues that are just going to run into the filibuster in the Senate. And then it seems like everything's going to turn into a conversation about the filibuster. The one thing that I will point to in the coming weeks and months about movement on certain things in the Congress is that, remember, nominations are only a majority vote. And the Biden White House has indicated that they will end up sending judicial nominations to the Senate pretty soon. Obviously, you know the success that former President Trump and former Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell had in filling the judiciary with conservative jurists. And Democrats realize that is a serious deficit for them, and they're really going to try to play catch up here.
And they have a lot of district court judges, a very great number of district court judges, for example, in California, where both Democratic senators can turn in a blue slip. The blue slip is still honored, and we can go down that rabbit hole another day. But I want to stay on the absolute frozen nature of the legislative process and expand a little bit. This is deep into the weeds. Yesterday, Democrats explained that the Biden package on infrastructure was likely to come in two parts. A first part that had corporate tax increases attached to infrastructure spending, and a second part that had personal income tax increases attached to additional spending. I don't know how they get two more bites at the apple, Seung Min, because there's only one more reconciliation in this Congress, unless I've missed something. Am I right about that? They get one more reconciliation bill?
That's the thinking of all of us, that they have just two bites at the apple this year because it depends on having established or the Congress having passed a budget for the fiscal year. So we believe there is only one more shot at a reconciliation bill left. The two-step strategy, at least from the Democratic perspective, is a thought that maybe the first package that focuses on infrastructure in the classic sense. So, roads, bridges, and other, perhaps some technological advancements, some expansion of broadband. They're wondering if that is something that could get Republican support, because obviously Republicans have infrastructure projects in their home states, their home districts that they would like to improve or have done. And then the second part is something that officials have described to us as sort of a quote individual infrastructure or personal infrastructure, and that's where the provisions such as keeping the child tax credit until the year 2025 comes into play. But Republicans on Capitol Hill yesterday said that two-step package seems kind of like trying to pull a wool over the Republicans' eyes, and they ruled that out as a non-starter option. So that if the White House were thinking that two-step strategy would at least get Republican votes on the first part, that doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Reality-based radio is what I do, Seung Min Kim. And there is not going to be more than one bill with more than 50 votes. The reconciliation bill will get Manchin support. No Republicans will vote for it. Just bottom lining it. When they come to that realization, the second part of my in the weeds question is, will they put parts 1 and 2 back together again and try and get it all done, all $3 trillion, every tax hike pumped into one bill, and do what they just did? Because they can do that. I mean, they did it once, they can do it twice, and then they have to stop. Would they dare raise taxes in an election year?
So in terms of pushing everything back together, once they realize, if and when they realize that their two-step strategy will fail, I think it's a safe bet to assume that they're going to try to combine everything in one package. We know $3 trillion is a huge number. Obviously, a lot of it funded through tax increases. But Democrats, particularly before the 2022 midterms, have made it clear that they want to show results to their constituents, to their voters, to show that the Biden White House and a Democratic-led Congress is getting things done for constituents, whether it's coronavirus relief or a massive infrastructure package that's in the trillions of dollars. So I would expect it to be as big, as ambitious as possible, but you are going to start to see a little bit of concern from even maybe senators beyond Joe Manchin in terms of the size of the infrastructure package. $3 trillion, I mean, I don't need to tell you, is a lot of money. So I would be watching folks such as Senator Angus King, the independent from Maine, in terms of the price tag of the package and how you're going to pay for it. Certainly it's not going to be just Senator Joe Manchin who has a voice in the package, although he does remain one of the more important characters in the Senate these days.
No, I think Mark Kelly in Arizona, Raphael Warnock in Georgia, and Maggie Hassan in New Hampshire, which are the targeted Democrats in 2022, also have to worry about this spending spree. So, Seung Min, I want to go back one more time to the filibuster. Nothing moves unless the filibuster changes. The filibuster isn't going to change. Therefore, only one thing is going to move. It is likely to be spending and tax package. Beyond that, and nominations, what are people going to talk about except election 2022? They're denied Trump, Trump bingo every morning, whatever the Trump tweet said. They're denied that. It's all gone. And President Biden is supremely disinterested in talking to the press. Does the press despair yet of writing the same story again and again and again and again?
We could be talking about election 2024, although I think that's a little bit early right now. But there is a lot of action, of a lot of scrutiny and attention and lights that need to be shined on work that specifically the Biden administration is doing. Even if there isn't much in the way of specific legislation, there's been a lot of attention from the press and others about the handling or the Biden administration's handling of the border crisis, and that's certainly going to be a major story in the next several months, and just how DHS and HHS grapple with the management and the humanitarian and the national security challenges of what's going on at the border.
Seung Min, if I can interrupt, that's an executive branch. I'm focusing on the Congress. I want to make sure I ask you one thing. The one area where I think Republicans and Democrats could work is on laws governing technology, particularly surveillance technology and market concentration. Is there any working group? Because that's the one area where both parties have concern, where I could legitimately see comprehensive regulatory reform coming up. Has that begun? Is there a group meeting?
So there is, in speaking generally, there is a group of 20 senators, 10 Republicans, 10 Democratic senators, informally called the Senate G20, who have been meeting regularly, perhaps believe on Wednesdays, to talk over various issues. One topic that they have discussed as a potential area of compromise, for example, is raising the federal minimum wage. But I do not believe big tech has been a part of that agenda, part of that group of 20 discussion. But certainly they are looking for areas where they can make a difference, and we could, and it's definitely worth continuing to ask this group led by, Joe Manchin and Susan Collins, whether that's on their plate.
Yeah, have you written up the G20 yet, Seung Min?
I have not. I've been focusing on what the White House has been up to.
I look forward to finding someone to tell me who's in the G20. Seung Min Kim, always a pleasure to talk to you. Follow her on Twitter at Seung Min Kim. She knows the most and reports it the most fairly of anybody I know. Follow her on Twitter. Read her in the Washington Post.